The top of the pyramid is reserved for the very few children who continue to exhibit behavior that causes them difficulties, even when caregivers have attended to the issues addressed at the base of the pyramid. Having staff and parents have positive relationships with children, having a care setting that's arranged carefully to promote appropriate behavior, and that there's been an intentional approach to support the development of social and emotional skills. The infants and toddlers we will focus on in this section are children who demonstrate behaviors that do not appear to be improving on their own or with the typical level of care. Some infants and toddlers may come to us with these behaviors, while others may develop them while in our care. Our goal is to address the distress of these very young children and to intervene before the behavior becomes entrenched for the child and seriously impacts the family, the care setting, and the child's relationships. An important reason to be able to respond effectively to this group of children is that we know that many of them are vulnerable and at risk of becoming expelled from child care settings if the behaviors persist. These are often the children and families who could most benefit from the support of a high-quality care and education program. Persistent challenging behavior, not the normal challenges that are frequently related to typical development, usually does not just go away on its own, but is rather continues over time and creates more problems for the child in his or her relationships and development. Research shows that for older children with behavior problems, these problems were regularly identified in their early years. In Module 1, we described and explored the definition of social-emotional development in infants and toddlers as the developing capacity to experience, regulate, and express emotions, form close and secure interpersonal relationships, and explore the environment and learn, all in the context of family, community, and culture. These are the skills and characteristics that infants and toddlers bring to their ability to cope with distress. One of our tasks as caregivers is to support this development of these coping skills that are the hallmarks of early mental health. Next, we will learn about how to support infants and toddlers who struggle with these tasks to the extent that their overall development is threatened. Challenging behavior is defined as behavior that includes physical aggressions such as hitting, kicking, punching, spitting, throwing objects forcefully, pinching, pushing, and biting. Climbing on things that are not for climbing, destroying property, destroying what another child is working on, regardless of the other child's response, taking toys away from other children forcefully, running that poses a safety risk or elopement from the classroom, tantrum behaviors that include kicking, screaming, pushing an object or a person, stomping feet, or head banging, verbal aggression including yelling, threats, screaming at another person, calling children bad names, and saying bad words, ordering an adult to do something, for example, leave me alone, persistent or prolonged crying that is loud or disruptive or ongoing crying that interferes with the child's engagement in activities, inappropriate use of materials such as jumping off chairs, throwing objects, statements that are non-compliant, or clear and explicit verbal or physical refusal to follow directions, or inappropriate touching, stripping, or other behaviors that are hurtful, disruptive, or dangerous to their self or others. How does challenging behavior of infants and toddlers interfere with learning and/or engagement in prosocial interactions with peers and adults? A baby who is extremely fussy might receive less positive attention and physical closeness from adults and therefore become delayed in her social development. Peers may begin to avoid a toddler who frequently bites. As a result, the toddler who bites may have less opportunity to learn to play cooperatively or develop age-appropriate language skills. A parent of a child who bites may also avoid or limit peer social situations for the child. A baby who is quiet and hard to engage may be left alone frequently by caregivers who may not feel connected to the child. When thinking about infants and toddlers, our concern centers on the cost to the child of the continued distress. What might be the price or consequence of not addressing challenging behavior early on? The behavior may become habitual, more frequent, and/or more difficult to change. The behavior may impact the quality of the caregiving. A child with challenging behavior may receive less positive interactions. Peer relationships may be impacted. Other children may avoid playing with the child. Other developmental areas may be impacted. A child may be less able to focus on the other aspects of learning due to expending energy on emotional stress or challenging behavior. It is more expensive, more intrusive, and less effective to intervene later in a child's life. Our problem-solving emphasis is typically on relieving the distress the child may be experiencing early on. There are a number of reasons why children engage in challenging behavior. Some of these include an undiagnosed health problem. For example, a toddler is not hearing well because of repeated ear infections. A developmental surge. An infant is beginning to learn to walk. Or a developmental problem. For example, a baby may be overwhelmed by sensory input. A major influence on the child is the social emotional environment in which he lives and the quality and responsiveness of important relationships. This includes both current and past experiences. Exploring recent and past changes with families is critical to understanding an infant or toddler's unique experiences. We know that experiences such as chronic stress or witnessing or experiencing abuse can impact babies negatively. However, even positive changes, such as a move to a new home or an extended visit from a well-loved grandmother, can be challenging to an infant or toddler. Too much excitement or too many changes over a period of time can make it difficult for a very young child to maintain a sense of equilibrium. This may result in behavior that is uncharacteristic of that child or that is a regression to an earlier developmental behavior. For example, waking in the night for a baby who has been sleeping through the night, or toileting accidents for a child who has previously been trained. Additional reasons that may contribute to a child engaging in challenging behavior. Temperament. Temperament styles and traits are neither good nor bad in themselves. What matters is how the environment responds to them. Families and teachers who understand and accommodate temperament traits will manage more successfully, gradually extending the child's capacity to cope. Substance abuse. Substance abuse during pregnancy can lead to children being born with developmental delays and difficulties with learning, memory, attention, planning, problem solving, impulsiveness, hyperactivity, problems regulating emotions, as well as perception and sensory integration. Nutrition. Babies who are malnourished in utero may be more irritable and unresponsive, and their behavior, such as a high-pitched cry, can make them difficult to care for. They also may have trouble handling stress and focusing their attention. Parenting practices. Particular parenting practices continue to increase the risk of challenging behaviors as children grow older. When parents are not involved with their children, do not respond warmly to them, and use harsh, inconsistent discipline, children may react with defiant, aggressive, and impulsive behaviors. Violence. Exposure to violence can affect children's ability to learn, to establish relationships with others, and to cope with stress. Even verbal conflict can upset children, and when it is combined with physical conflict, it can contribute to both emotional problems and challenging behavior. Improving an infant's or toddler's behavior requires intervening with the adults who care for the child. Challenging behavior that is extreme impacts all the infant's or toddler's relationships, including but not limited to the caregiver, the family, and peer relationships. The approach for addressing challenging behavior of infants and toddlers is a relational one that addresses the challenges that may exist within the relationships surrounding and including the infant and toddler. Remember that behavior is a form of communication. What the infant or toddler is experiencing, what it's like to be in that child's body, and what it's like to be in that child's world. Picture an iceberg. Focus on the tip of the iceberg, the part above the water. The challenging behavior is what you see above the water, the tip. The tip shows the behaviors infants and toddlers use when they are not able to experience, express, and regulate emotions, form close and secure relationships, and explore the environment and learn, all within the context of family, community, and culture. The rest of the iceberg, which is hidden from sight below the surface, represents potential needs that are not being met and skills that need to be developed. What is going on that causes the behavior? Like the larger portion of the iceberg that is under the surface, the meaning of extreme behavior is often difficult to see and to understand. Let's identify some of the key essential needs of infants and toddlers, and this may include feeling safe, ongoing relationships, emotionally responsive environments, an environment that is matched to the child's temperament, structure and consistency, good nutrition, good health, opportunities for movement, rest, a sense of belonging with the family and culture, and engaging and stimulating environments. When we think about the behavior of infants and toddlers, much of the behavior considered challenging is behavior that expresses strong emotion or little emotion at all. The behavior we are talking about is behavior that may be typical for a child's developmental stage, for example, tantrums, but it is the intensity, the frequency, or the duration of the behavior that causes it to be challenging to caregivers and that distinguishes it from typical behavior. Let's think about a 6-month-old who cries for long periods of time unless he is held by a caregiver. What is the tip of the iceberg behavior? That would be crying. Which social emotional skills may the child not have developed or be able to use in this situation? That would be self-regulation, the ability to self-soothe by closing his eyes, sucking a finger, taking a deep breath. What might be underneath the surface? He is scared when he is alone. The childcare space is noisy and frightening to him. He is lonely. He is held a lot at home because his family believes that an infant should be held close, or perhaps he lives in a large extended family where there is always a pair of arms and the floor is not a safe place for a baby. He is sensitive and is anxious about the room noise or other children. He does not feel good and maybe he's getting sick. The concept of the iceberg, keeping that in mind, can be helpful when thinking about human behavior. Our efforts to understand the meaning of the behavior are the first steps in finding an appropriate response to the child. In other words, our understanding of the meaning of the behavior is critical in devising a strategy to address the situation that produces the challenging behavior. All behavior has a purpose, and for young children, the challenging behavior, it is not a manipulation. A young child is not purposely behaving in a way that is meant to cause difficulty. It just takes time and effort on the caregiver's part to understand the intent of a child's communication and then to find new ways to fulfill the need or teach the child other ways to communicate his or her needs. Infants and toddlers have two primary styles of behavior that communicate distress, either withdrawal or acting out. The first group of behaviors that has been termed acting out behaviors. These behaviors have a driven quality that is expressed either in the intensity, the frequency, or the duration of the behavior. The second group of behaviors, termed withdrawing behaviors or social withdrawing behaviors, sometimes these are referred to as internalizing behaviors. These behaviors appear tense because the child uses them so frequently or so consistently. A child exhibiting this type of behavior may appear to have given up attempting to get to his needs met and to have moved away from interaction with others. Nevertheless, the infant or toddler is expressing his experience, and it may appear to be a preference. This type of challenging behavior is often overlooked in a busy childcare setting.